Okay, hello everyone. Hi again. Welcome. My name is Mahfam Ghods. I am the programming coordinator for 2022 Calgary European Film Festival. And this is the Q&A session for the Irish movie of this year, Foscadh, with the film director Seán Breathnach.
And just before we start today, I would like to give a huge thank you to the Consulate General of Ireland in Vancouver and the Irish Society in Calgary for sponsoring this year's Irish film. And the film is Foscadh, as you have already introduced, and director-writer Seán Breathnach is joining us today for a Q&A session. So Seán, welcome to Calgary European Film Festival 2022 from Calgary. You're in Galway, Ireland at the moment, I believe.
I am indeed, and thank you so much for showing our film. Thank you so much for inviting me for this Q&A. Really looking forward to it.
Perfect. So I'll jump into some questions, Seán. These will just be some general questions to give the audience a good feel of who you are as a director and just what the film Foscadh is about. So Foscadh is an adaptation of Irish writer Donal Ryan's book, The Thing About December. How did you come to be involved in the film, and what interested you in the main characters from the book to take it on as a full-length film?
How did I get involved in it? Well, producer Paddy Hayes approached me with Donal Ryan's novel and asked me to read it. And he wondered if I would have been able to write an adaptation of it, because he saw a lot of cinematic potential in the novel. I had also made a short film which had garnered some prizes called Solitude, with a similar story about a lonely bachelor single man in the west of Ireland. So I think Paddy saw a connection there and thought that I might be able to do a job on this novel. So I distinctly remember it was about 2017, I think it was winter 2017. He arrived with the novel. I read it in one sitting on a rainy Friday day. I remember very, very well. And I was blown away by this novel. And I think what attracted me to it and what I thought I could give the adaptation was a strong visual sense. It's a novel very much about masculinity and themes of heritage and the weight that can place on individuals. And I was quite taken by this main character, John Z. Cunliffe in the novel. We just went with John Cunliffe in our film. And I liked the challenge of adapting pretty much a loner, a man in this interesting environment who has difficulty in communicating himself other than through his environment and the visuals that surround him. I just liked the challenge of that. And once we began talking, I began working on a script, and we were very lucky to secure some funding to film it.
Excellent. Just out of interest, you would have read the novel in the Gaelic language initially, would you?
No, I read it in English.
In English, okay.
But there was a funding scheme a new funding scheme around 2017 called Cine Cahad, which was there's a national television station through Irish called TG Cahad, and the Irish Film Board came together to develop Irish language films. And Paddy assumed or thought that we might be able to write this adaptation and see if we could secure funding through that particular scheme. So although the novel's in English, and I might talk about the geography of it later on, but the novel was set in the Midlands of Ireland, which is an English-speaking region in County Tipperary. What I did was I adapted it to my side of the country, which is to the west, which is an Irish-speaking district.
Okay, very good. What do you think were the biggest challenges in adapting a 200-plus page book to a 90-ish minute movie?
How much time have you got? Well, this is the first time I had adapted someone else's work, and it was my first feature film, so there were a lot of learnings. And as I tackled the content of the book, I guess I learned a little bit more. But looking back now in hindsight, I can see pretty clearly now what the challenges were. But I overcame those hurdles during the writing, and I actually wrote 15 drafts, which is quite a number of drafts. And I think each draft improved, and I workshopped with actors and so forth. But the biggest challenge, I suppose, was deciding what to keep in and what to leave out. Of course, with a novel, particularly with this kind of story, which is very much about a singular character, in a novel, you have this great tool whereby you can write the protagonist's thoughts and feelings and so forth. You don't have that luxury with a film unless you go down the route of having a voiceover. And I was determined not to have a voiceover. I wanted the environment to speak for him and the actor to emote the feelings. So that was a challenge, but it was kind of a challenge I relished. And that was difficult, but I think we were reasonably successful on that front. Another challenge was the sheer number of characters in the novel. We had to amalgamate a lot of the characters because you just can't take 200 pages and turn it into 90 minutes. You have to pick and choose the parts that best support the story you want to tell. And I would say that the film diverges a little bit from where the novel, particularly in the third act. And those were all decisions that came through the different drafts, and our story of the novel evolved as we wrote. And of course, taking it from the English language to the Irish language necessitated certain changes as well.
Very good and very interesting. You got to 15 drafts before kind of finalizing the idea. Did you notice a lot of changes from, say, draft 1? By the time you got to draft 15, had it changed significantly in many ways, I imagine?
It did. I suppose the first 3 or 4 drafts that were most of the changes happened. By drafts 5 through 15, it was more of a fine-tuning process, I would say. But also what we tended to do was to take things out, lines of dialogue, altering scenes and so forth. And around draft 10-ish, I brought the 3 main actors for the 3 main characters, Siobhan, John, and Dave, together, and we basically acted the entire film out in a workshop scenario, and I filmed the contents of it, and then I wrote subsequent drafts depending on how lines of dialogue and actions that I had seen in these workshops felt. So yeah, there was quite a bit of a change between drafts 1 to 4 initially, and then from, say, 5 through 15. But I thought that was the best way of working, and I wouldn't even use the word changes. I'd say evolution. It just evolved and became more truthful, I hope. And the characters were, I asked the actors to do some homework, to imagine the biographies of their characters, and then we tried to include some of that in some of the scenes and some of the dialogues. So I don't want to give anything away, but particularly the Siobhan character, played brilliantly by Fionnuala O'Flaherty, gave some hints to her previous romantic life, and we kind of included that in the stories. And I thought it was great to give the actors some ownership of the characters that we're given. And even during the filming of it, there was a lot of freedom to ad lib and to have some fun during the scenes. And that was this kind of organic method was important to me. And if I had more time, I think I would have had more than 15 drafts. But producer said, "Come on, we need to actually go ahead and film this."
Okay, and that leads nicely into my next question. So for producer Paddy Hayes, once you got to, say, draft 12, was Paddy becoming helpful? Was he becoming more cooperative, or was he kind of pushing you to maybe reach a final draft in the near future?
Oh goodness, he was. To be completely fair to him, because the producer has to, of course, balance the budget and all of that. And when you're workshopping with actors and whatnot, you're spending money without actually putting anything in the can or anything on the screen. So he was very understanding, and he did give me a good bit of freedom for the approach that I wanted to do. I think when he saw the results of that, there are certain scenes that just, I think, are really, really natural and magnetic on the screen. I think he saw the benefit of that. But you're right, a date was set. We filmed in November 2019, the end of November 2019, which is a good time in Ireland in terms of the light. It's nice and contrasty and interesting. And once we had a date on the horizon, well, you have no choice to finish up and to move on.
Okay, very good. Just moving on to the musical score, this stood out as being very effective in knitting together a lot of the characters and scenes throughout the movie. Can you tell us who was involved with the musical score and why you ended up choosing them to score this film?
Oh, absolutely. I'll tell you how we came to the name of the composer is Sindri Mar Sigfusson. He's Icelandic, so he's almost closer to you guys in Calgary than he is to us in Ireland. Almost, maybe not quite. But when we were designing the film and thinking about the film and thinking about the marketing of the film and all of that, we wanted to stay away from stereotypical Irish films and certainly stereotypical Irish music. We thought it would be kind of interesting so that to kind of complement the universality of the themes, to bring a composer from outside of the country. We just thought that might be an interesting idea. And through some connections our director of photography had in Iceland, we were put in touch with a record company in Iceland who brought us towards Sindri Mar Sigfusson, who's quite a big Icelandic pop star. He goes under the name Sin Fang in Iceland. And he's got quite a successful career as a pop singer, really, with some electronic and other stuff. So I was introduced to Sindri's music, and I just fell in love with it. There was just a connection I felt, to be honest. And once we met online, this was now during COVID time, so I couldn't actually physically meet him, but once we began discussing the film online, I just felt a connection to him. And when I explained thematically what I wanted to do, and he started sending some demos, the match was made pretty much. Initially we wanted to fly Sindri over to Ireland to live in the house that you'll see on screen. So that we thought that might be quite evocative for him. But unfortunately, COVID just got worse, and that wasn't possible. But Sindri just added this interesting, kind of like a skin to the film, and he just gave it the kind of sensibility that we wanted. But much like my work with the actors, I just feel like the best way film is collaborative, in my opinion. That would be my philosophy, and I just wanted to have an organic take on it. And I explained to him the themes and the feelings and the characters, and I gave him a fair bit of freedom to find the musical cues that best reflected that. And then we tweaked it during the process and brought it to what you will hear on the screen.
Very good. Yeah, it is an excellent soundtrack for sure. So well done on a good choice there.
It's on Spotify if anyone wants to listen to it. It's on Spotify. Yeah.
The film is shot in the Irish language. Were there any challenges with shooting a full-length film in the Irish language? And do you think any of the meaning is perhaps lost when translated into English subtitles during the film?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. That's a really excellent question, because truthfully, I do think you lose a little bit of the soul of the language in the subtitles, and you try your best. I had a lot of input in the subtitles, and you try your best to keep the tradition and the soul and the meaning of what the actors are saying by translating into the English language. But I think you do lose a little bit. That said, there are different considerations when you have subtitles, such as duration of time on the screen before the shot changes and other technical aspects. There's certain phraseology in Irish that is almost impossible to translate. one of the characters, Paddy, tells John at the beginning of the film, "Nabi the Fuka Fasta," and we translated that, you can't continue on as a ghost or living as a ghost. And in Irish, that means that you need to grow up, and you need to find your way, and you can't stay within yourself, I suppose. And while the word ghost kind of gives you that meaning, I think, I don't know if I have a word in English that really conveys exactly what that line means, and it is arguably the most important line in the film, perhaps. So it's a challenge, but that's part of it. But I guess you hope through the way the actors emote, through the framing of the film, through the music, through the editing and the montage and so forth, that the meaning and the message and the intentions come across.
Okay, very good. Just moving to the main cast, were there any challenges casting the film, in particular the three main actors, John Cunliffe, Dave, and Siobhan?
Well, no, that's a great question as well. I suppose so. It was the film was quite realistic in its depiction of the Irish language. So we were going for a naturalism, realism in that sense. So in Ireland, there are a few Gaelic regions where the Irish language is predominantly spoken, including my region, which is Connemara, which has a population, an Irish-speaking population of about 12,000 people or thereabouts. So it's quite important to me that the depiction of the Irish language was as accurate as possible. So the audience might hear some words in English going through it, which would just be realistic. People with Irish swear in English, for example, that cuss in English. So finding talented actors that could realistically depict the language is a challenge. But luckily, we cast the fantastic Donal O'Haley, who was nominated for an IFTA for his performance in this, which would be the Irish equivalent of the Oscars, who just imbued the character of John Cunliffe with something that I couldn't even imagine when writing the story. I think what I learned was that we do have talented actors in the Irish language. Donal was cast, without an audition or anything. He was who we wanted, and we approached him, and we were honoured that he agreed to act in it. The other parts were there was an open audition, and the Dave character, played by Cillian O'Garvey, isn't a native Irish speaker, and he's from Limerick, which isn't in the Gaelic region, in the Irish-speaking region, but he can speak Irish. But his audition was just so electric that I actually changed the character amongst those drafts, maybe draft 6 or 7, to reflect his upbringing and to bring it in line with the realism that I wanted in portraying the language on screen. And Fionnuala is from the Aran Islands, which is off the Galway coast, and she's a Gaelic, a native Irish speaker, and again she just wowed at the audition. But the character John Cunliffe with Donal O'Haley, we actually sought him out, and I don't know if anyone else could play that part, in all honesty.
Okay, very interesting. So you did mention the filming took place at the end of 2019. How long did the filming take, and what would you say was the most interesting thing you learned from the process of making a full-length film? And we understand, of course, COVID happened early 2020, so that may have also affected this whole process for you.
Yeah, the filming was at the end of November 2019 into the first week of December 2019. So we had 24 days of filming. We had quite a small crew, and that allowed us to extend the filming with our budget by 3 days or so. So we had 24 days. As you might guess now from most of my answers, there was quite an organic approach to how we were going to create the film. A lot of the scenes were completely scripted, of course, but what I asked the actors to do, and this is something this was very instinctual, and I find the best parts of the film the most realistic and interesting parts of the film, I guess, happen when the actors felt a sense of freedom. So while we'd have a scene which would be scripted, dialogue and so forth, and the actors would be required to do that, what I asked them to do was to imagine the scene beginning 30 or 40 seconds beforehand and finishing 30 or 40 seconds after. So I told them, you can say whatever you like and do whatever you like for that 30 seconds before we hit the dialogue as in the script, and you can react and say and do whatever you want for the 40 seconds afterwards, and we will see what we have. And frequently there were some gems and some interesting looks and emotions conveyed in those kind of handles either side of what was scripted in the film. The biggest takeaway that I've taken from that experience now is that I should have done more of that, and I should have trusted my instinct. And I think what I've learned is that you should be super organized when you're making a feature film. You should have all your preparation done, but doing that allows you to be a little spontaneity and allows you to discover things. Once you have the characters and the whole crew in the right frame of mind and in the story world, things happen, and you should be ready to capture that and be willing and open to that. That's a big learning that I took from it, and I learned so much, and I learned so much about collaboration. I learned so much about listening, and I learned a lot about trusting my instincts, I think.
Excellent. And this was your first full-length feature film, was it?
This was my first full-length feature. I had made a number of short films, and I'd shot a number of documentaries, and but this was a completely different challenge, but one that I relished and one that I look forward to, I hope, hopefully doing again.
Excellent. The film won Best Irish First Feature at the Galway Film Fleadh 2021, and was also then selected by the Irish Film and Television Academy to represent Ireland at the Oscars by competing in the Best International Feature Film category for the 94th Academy Awards in 2022. This seems like an amazing achievement for a first feature film. So can you just explain what it felt like to be getting these awards and these kind of accolades for your first feature film?
No one is as surprised as I was, I can tell you. You're making the film, and you're in this bubble, and you don't know if it's good or if people will react to it, but you have to trust your instinct. And I felt the crew were very supportive and all that, and I felt we were making something somewhat special, reasonably special, during the filming of it. And then you come to the editing, and you start carving the film up and trying to shape it and so forth. I guess towards the end of the editing, I felt that there was something. I felt that we had made a film of reasonable quality, but I also felt a lot of, this imposter syndrome, wondering, is this any good, and will it make sense to people, and how will they react to it? Once we premiered it in the Galway Film Fleadh, which is probably Ireland's most prestigious film festival. Once that prize was given to us, I certainly felt a lot more confidence, and that really, made me feel a little bit better. I still have imposter syndrome. I still feel so honored when any film festival chooses to show the film, and I get a huge buzz out of that. It has traveled all over the world, and it has won a number of prizes. It was a huge honor to be selected by IFTA to have this film represent Ireland at the 94th Academy Award. It didn't make the final list, of course, but just to be chosen by the country made me feel amazing, I must say, and just gives you confidence that you might know what you're doing, or that you might have some form of ability to make a film. But I stress, I still have a crisis of confidence now and again, and I'm not being self-deprecating or anything like that. I genuinely do, and it helps. I certainly look back at that with pride and with a huge sense of achievement and happiness.
Excellent. Just moving on to the main character, John Cunliffe. He seems to be a representation of a part of Ireland that is often overlooked or forgotten about in the typical film-making industry in Ireland. But yet there are many John Cunliffe type people existing throughout every county of Ireland in their own unique way. Do you think the success of the film in some way is due to all these characters resonating with people in every county of Ireland?
Well, that's one of the things that audiences tell me, not only in Ireland but in other countries as well. They tell me, I know someone like that. You know, I don't know if it's a particularly rural phenomenon, more so than an urban one, maybe. But I think you certainly see people like this in Ireland, as you'll know as well, predominantly men who have kind of probably had land left to them and feel a sense of guilt to the heritage and to the upkeep and to the tradition of that land. And certainly in Ireland, where our forefathers fought and died to win freedom from Britain for our independence, there's a certain amount of importance given to land, and it's not given away or sold lightly, particularly in rural situations. And what I think you find is sons, traditionally land would have been left to sons, are expected to for the upkeep of the land and to continue on the family name with the land. And some people are well suited for that, and some people are not. And some people give up everything for that, a chance for love, a chance to leave and to find themselves, to discover the world, and just become anchored to this debt that is left to them. And I think that's the story, ultimately, of our main character, John Cunliffe. On top of that, he has had parents who have almost overloved him, who haven't allowed him to fall, haven't allowed him to find himself. And once he's in that situation, he finds that he has to discover that himself, I guess. Many people like that in Ireland, many older people like that in Ireland in particular. And it would break your heart to see them. They find it difficult to communicate. They find it difficult to talk to people, and they lead these horrendously lonely lives. And loneliness can hit us all, of course, but it's so important to be able to talk to each other. And I really wanted to make a film about someone like that. The novel is about someone like that, but I really wanted to make a film about someone like that because I know many people like that, and my heart breaks for them.
Okay, thank you. Just quickly moving on to producer Paddy Hayes. So Foscadh was produced by the Irish producer, director, neither Paddy Hayes. Can you tell us what it was like to work with Paddy and what you would have learned from Paddy on your first full-length feature film?
Anyone who knows Paddy has a fantastic sense of humor, is a very jovial, kind man. I look at him like a big brother, because I wouldn't be the most I wouldn't be a general on the set. I'd be contemplative, and I'd like to inspire people by explaining the story as I saw it and so forth. And Paddy often put his arms around me and took care of all of the problems and the logistics of stuff, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. So Paddy is a fantastic producer, a fantastic person, full stop, and immensely intelligent and at the top of his game, I would say. So working with someone like Paddy, our personalities, I think, complement each other, was fantastic. And I hope to work with him again in the future. I hope that would be a dream of mine as well. He is a very effective producer, very creative in his own right. As you mentioned, he's a director as well, and he just seemed to make all problems disappear for me and to allow me space to try and find the performances and the actors and find the right lighting and cinematography and framing for the shots, and for that I'll be eternally grateful, I think.
How important do you think it is to have that positive, good relationship with your producer as the director for the overall success of the film?
That's a good question, because I often read about, you know, sets and productions that are full of tension, and they sometimes produce really interesting films. And it was just the opposite for us. It was quite a slow-paced, contemplative kind of set, I think, and that's what I was told. Now, this is my first feature, so I don't have anything to compare it to, but a number of the crew told me that, and they told me that we really enjoyed working on this because they felt their work was valued. I can't think of any other way to work. I don't think I could work any other way, and I don't, irrespective of what I do, I think that's the way I have to work. I feel there has to be good communication, listening, respect, and hard work, obviously. I think that's just essential. I would find it difficult to work any other way. That said, I often hear about different productions. I mean, the famous example might be something like Fitzcarraldo with Werner Herzog, or Apocalypse Now with Francis Ford Coppola, where it seems to be full of problems, but two amazing bits of art created from it. I don't have a definitive answer for you, Eoin, I'm afraid. I just I can only give you what I experienced, and I cannot imagine doing it any other way.
Okay, no, fair enough. I understand it is your very first data point on your history, or your future, I mean, in directing interesting films. So just a quick question here, more for the benefit of the audience here in Calgary. So we're a good 12-hour drive from the nearest coastline, which is, it's often hard to even imagine what that is like when you live somewhere in Ireland. But could you give us a quick description of where the film was set in the west of Ireland, in the area of Connemara, please?
Absolutely. So Connemara, there are three predominant Irish-speaking regions on the west coast of Ireland, one in the north, one in the west, one in the south. Connemara, where the film is set and where I'm from, is in the west. So it's halfway down the country in County Galway. Connemara, with Irish speakers and everything, would probably be population in and around 15-ish thousand people. So 15,000 native Irish speakers. It's mountainous, it's by the sea, there's a lot of bogland, very little vegetation, and much like you'll see in the film, I'm sure. The novel, interestingly, was set in the Midlands of Ireland, which is quite lush and the most fertile part of the country. So in terms of visuals for the film, it's quite different from the novel. Everyone speaks Irish in Connemara. Irish is the main language. I would have been brought up with Irish, but everyone can also speak English, of course. But I suppose it's a distinctive region. Ireland has two official languages, Irish and English, but most of the country, 95% of the country, would speak English every day, daily, whereas probably even less than 5%, way less than 5% would speak Irish daily. Connemara has its own traditions. It would have the reason why a lot of Gaelic regions exist with Irish speakers is because the land was considered too poor to be worthy of colonizing by the English. So a lot of the traditions and the languages remained. That's the truth of it. Whereas the lusher, more fertile parts of the country were colonized, and English was then the main language there. So in many ways, these mountainous, boggy parts of the country are distinctive in not only in geography but in the culture and traditions that they have, and they're almost like a forgotten part of the country. Yet they're a lot more celebrated now because of the culture, and I think they're growing and they're beginning to find their voice. And I hope this film is an example of that, of a region that's kind of finding its voice.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Seán. That was a fantastic overview of your experiences as a director on this Irish film, Foscadh. And well done on such a great achievement for your first Irish feature film. And we'll all look forward to viewing it here in Calgary and look forward to seeing what's coming next from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the excellent questions.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
No worries.